What's up, everybody? Mr. Bab back with another video. Today we got 14.3, so we're going to be graphing sine and cosine just like yesterday, except for today we're going to have some shifts. So our graph, they're going to move either up or down, depending on a couple different things. So little warm up here. Let's graph one sine graph. This 2 in front. This is called our amplitude. This tells us how high or how low our graph is going to get. So in this case, it's going to get as high as 2, so I can label my graph like this. And then the way that we find our period to label these bottom parts is we do 2 pi over b, and the b value is the 1 in front of the x right there. So in this case, it's just a 1. So we got 2 pi over 1, so that's just going to be 2 pi. So we're going to put that at the 4th mark here, so 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 pi goes there. Halfway then would be pi. Half of that is pi over 2, and then this one would be 3 pi over 2. So if you remember, for our sine graph, it starts at 0, and then we're going to go, since this number in front is a positive 2, we're going to go high, middle, low, middle, like that. And now we can connect it, and so it looks something like that. All right. Sweet. Let's take a look at cosine. A little bit different here. So we got our amplitude here. And for cosine, this tells us where we're going to start. So in this case, we're going to start at -1/2. So we can kind of make our graph look like that. We got 0 here. We'll call this one up here positive 1, and this -1. Now to find our period, it's the same thing. It's going to be 2 pi over our b value, which is just 1. So it's going to be 2 pi again. We go out to the 4th mark. That's 2 pi. Here's pi. Here's pi over 2. And then here's 3 pi over 2 right there. So again, cosine doesn't start at 0. It's going to start at whatever our amplitude is. So in this case, it's going to start down here at 1/2. You're going to go to the middle, the midline. You're going to go to positive 1/2, back to the midline, and then finish back where you started. And that'll be one full period. So this will kind of look something like that, and that's how we would graph that. We'll talk a little bit more about changing periods on the back. I think we should feel decently comfortable with that. But let's take a look right here. So it says graph the trig function using the parent function. If you remember, for cosine at 0, you can kind of picture this in your head. But at 0 and x of 0, our cosine is 1. At 1/2, it's going to be 0. At pi, it's going to be -1. And then at 3 pi over 2, it's 0. And then it's back to 1 like that. So if we were to add 3 onto the end of it, what is this going to change? Well, 1 plus 3 is 4. 0 plus 3 is 3. -1 plus 3 is 2. 0 plus 3 is 3. And then 1 plus 3 is 4. So if we graph this first one in black, this is just going to be our normal cosine graph. So 0, 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3 here. We have our normal period down here, so pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And our normal graph, we would start at 1 right here. We go to the middle, down here to -1, back to the middle, and back up to 1. So it looks something kind of like that. And so this other one I'll do in red. What we can see here is that, well, first of all, we need to add another part up here for 4, because we can see that we get as high as 4 now. But what it's going to do is it's going to move all of our graph up 3, just like the transformations we had a couple units ago. So I would just move all of these points up 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, and 3. So the shape is exactly the same. We're just moving our graph up 3. All right. And so we can make a little note over here. We moved up 3. All right. So down here on the second one, you can kind of probably take a guess here. We can fill in this circle, but this is going to be 0, 1, 0, -1, 0. And if we come over here and graph it, so we got 0, 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3. if we graph this, we start at 0, we go up, middle, down, middle, and this is going to be our normal sine graph right there. And then we can see that this -2, that's probably going to tell us that we go down 2. So 0, that's -2, -1, -2, -3, and -2. And exactly that happens. We move everything down 2. So the shape looks the exact same. We've just moved everything down 2. So now you have it look kind of like that. All right, and we can make a little note. We went down 2. All right. So what is really going to tell us what's going on here? If we look down at this table, this is going to help us out. So our A value, again, is still just our amplitude. All right. This is our A. We take the absolute value of this. So this is going to be our min or our max, or like the highest/lowest point, depending on the graph. Our period is still the same. So it's going to be 2 pi over B, absolute value of B. And this is going to be the length of one full cycle, All right, and we're familiar with that. Now the midline, this is what's new for us today. This is going to be, let's use green here, that's going to be this C value here at the end. And this is going to tell us if we're going up or down. So we'll say moving up/down. It just depends on what's going on. So if you can look at these graphs up top, usually our midline is here at 0, and so everything kind of oscillates, we call that, around 0. But if we have a -2 in front, we're going to move everything down 2. So this midline goes down 2. And so it goes one full rotation up, back through the middle, and then back through the middle again. So that C value is going to tell us how much we're moving up and down. And by moving our midline, then we don't have to make a table every time to do our graph. We can just do our normal graph of like up, middle, down, middle thing, style like that. Okay. So we'll just say one last thing. We'll say that this is the horizontal line that our graph oscillates, which just means it goes around. All right, so it'd be like right here at 0, 0 if nothing's changing, right? Okay, sweet. So let's try a couple on the back of your notes. One last note that we should make is that sine starts at what your midline. It starts at the midline, and cosine is not going to start at your midline. It's going to start at your amplitude. Starts at amplitude. Or in this case, if the midline moves, then it will be a little bit different, but we'll see that right here. All right, so let's take a look here. We got sine of negative sine of x plus 2. So as we can see, this plus 2 right here tells us we're going to move up 2. So now our midline, we'll just continue to do that midline in green. That'll move up to right here for us. So if we take a look, it's still going to be labeled like this: 0, 1, 2, 3, and then -1, -2, -3. So we're not moving your axis, right? This darker line is still 0. Our entire graph is just going to move, okay? So to get our period, we look in front here, we do 2 pi over our B value, and so your period is still just 2 pi. We put this here at the 4th line, so that makes this pi. This one's going to be 3 pi over 2, and then this one right here is pi over 2. All right, so we can make a couple notes here. It looks like our amplitude is -1. Of course, we take the absolute value of that, so that would be 1. Midline, we moved up to 2. And then our period we have right here is just 2 pi. So for our sine graph, we know that this graph starts at our midline. All right, since it's a negative, well, we can make a note of that. It starts right here at our midline. Since it's a negative, we're going to go down first. So we go down, middle, middle, up, and then back to the middle. And so you can see the shape of your graph looks the same. We just shifted everything up up 2, I'm sorry. We just shifted everything up 2 from where our original thing was. Okay, let's try another one here. Cosine, we can see right here automatically we're going to go down 2. So our midline now is going to be at -2 instead of 0. Amplitude is the number out in front here, which is just going to be the absolute value of 1, which is just 1. Which for cosine, this is where we're going to start our graph. And then for our period, the way that we're going to do our period is we do 2 pi over our b value, which in this case is 1/2. 2 divided by 1/2 is going to give us 4 pi. So it'll take 4 pi to do 1 full rotation. We can label this here -2, -3. The fourth line will be 4 pi. So this is kind of easy here. Then this is going to be 3 pi, 2 pi, and just pi there. So we're going to move our midline down too. I'll do that in green. So we're going to move that down to here. And now we're ready to graph. So our graph again starts at your amplitude, right? So we're going to start 1 above our midline. So even though our amplitude's 1, we don't start at 1. It just means we start 1 above. So we're going to start right there. We go to the middle. We go low. We go back to the middle. And then back to where we started, right there. And so we can now graph this. Goes down, up, and then finishes right there. All right, so the only difference here is that you're kind of moving this axis right here down, but the same process, the same pattern occurs. Okay, let's take a look at another one here. +1, we're going to move up 1, which means our midline is now going to be at 1. So we can graph that right here on our graph. We're going to move everything up 1. This right here is our amplitude. So that's going to be 2, absolute value of 2, which is just equal to 2. Our period, we do 2 pi over 1, so that's just going to be 2 pi. We can label that right here, 2 pi. Here's pi over 2, and here's 3 pi over 2 right there. 0, 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3 there. For sine graph, we know that this one is going to start at our midline. Starts at our midline, and then we'll go to a maximum of 2. All right, so let's start here at our midline. We go 2 above our midline. So again, that 2 doesn't mean we're going to go to the number 2. It means we're going to go 2 above our midline, which would be right there. We go back to the midline, 2 below our midline, and then back to the middle. All right, and so then we connect our graph here. And we're going up first because this number is positive. If that's negative, we're going to go down first. All right. And that's what our graph's going to look like. Just like that. All right. Sweet. All right. So for each graph below, identify the features of the graph and then write sine or cosine. So the easiest thing to do here first is we can kind of identify our midline, which will help us figure out kind of what else is going on with our graph. So it starts here at 0, which means our midline is going to be right there at 0. It does 1 full rotation by the time it gets back to 2 pi. You can see it goes low and then back up here. So our period is going to be 2 pi. And then our amplitude, how high does it get? It gets as high as 3 and -3. So our amplitude is going to be 3, right? And we can also see that it's going down first. So that's going to be a negative graph, and in this case it's going to be negative sine, all right, because we're going down first. So technically our amplitude here is -3, but we take the absolute value, which gives us 3. So if we were to write an equation here, we're going to have y equals, we know it's going to be a sine graph, right? Since our period is 2 pi, then that means there's just an x there. That doesn't change. And then since our amplitude here was a -3, we're going to put a -3 right there. And that would be how we graph that right there. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at B. I can already tell this is going to be a cosine graph. And I can tell that because you can see the difference in the graphs here. This one just kind of goes up and then finishes right back down there. Okay, so we can see our midline is going to be in the middle here, because our cosine graph doesn't start at the midline. It starts above or below the midline. So right here you can see that our midline is now at 1. Our period, well, it starts here and it arrives back there at pi. We can see it does 1 full rotation by pi, so our period would be pi. Okay, and what this tells us is that since it's 2 pi over b, that in order for that to equal pi, b has to equal 2. Okay, and then our amplitude, the highest or lowest it goes, would just be 1. It goes 1 above our midline and then 1 below our midline. Okay, and since it starts down here at -1 first, 1 below, we know this is going to be a negative cosine graph. So when we write this, we'll say y equals our amplitude is 1, so I don't need to write 1. I'll say cosine of, and then since we said our b value has to be 2, then this would be 2x, like that. And then the last thing is that since we moved our midline up 1, on the back here we would put +1. All right. Sweet. Let's do one more. We'll do this one right here. This one is a sine graph. You can tell because it starts, goes up, down, and then comes back to where it met. So our midline is right here at -2. Our amplitude, let's see, it gets as high as 2 above and 2 below. So our amplitude would be 2. Period, it starts here at 0 and it gets back here at 2 pi. So our period would be 2 pi. And so the way that we would write this equation is, well, we said it's a sine graph. It's going up first, so it's going to be a positive sine graph. So we'll say y equals, and then our amplitude is 2. So 2 times the sine of, since our period is 2 pi, it's just an x, and then -2 on the back because our midline moved down 2. All right. So feel free to go back and watch any of this when I get back tomorrow. We can definitely talk a little more about it.